evening, afternoon, or whenever you're watching this. Tonight, here with us on this show is Matthew Cha, uh, someone who's been through Civic Mirror. So, what has mostly caused your problems?
I'd say that the most problems in Civic Mirror were caused by the government because they basically controlled too much in the business sector. So what happened is that they bought so many hexes in the hex auction, and well, they were all the hexes that produced all the necessary units that you needed to survive. And not only that, they had a really limited staff. So what happened there is that the distribution of those units was kind of hampered by it. And I know I'm not the only citizen who had problems getting some necessary units. Not only that, but since there are so many things that were businesses that were controlled by the government, all the money was basically flowing right to the government because, to start off, the government had a lot more money than the citizens of Hymes. And, well, since all the necessary units were basically owned by the government, everybody was paying the government to get those units, but no money was going from the government into the citizens' pockets.
So, do you think that the government should have planned ahead for all the possible outcomes?
Absolutely. However, since this is their first time ever governing anybody, I think we should cut them a little bit of slack, but they should have definitely planned ahead. They're kind of using like the U.S. government's kind of like hit or miss type of system, and I don't think they should really do that. I think they should plan and like really plan out some things instead. Basically, what they're relying on is their 2020 hindsight. They're letting the event pass before they actually look onto it. But what I think they should have done is probably either hired or like established a department where they actually would predict all the possible outcomes and plan accordingly.
I see. But, so you think that the government was incompetent? What I'm getting is that you think the government was full of people who couldn't have been in power in the first place, since, from your statements, they obviously weren't prepared for the responsibility that a government comes with.
Well, I think there are two parts to this. Firstly, anyone can plan ahead. I mean, you don't need a rocket scientist to plan, really. It's just that the government staff, well, it kind of chose not to. I mean, they kind of planned during class, but I don't get the feeling that they ever planned outside of class. Um, so I think that made them really unprepared, like just as unprepared as everybody else when the events actually came.
Okay, so you think they should have hired or created a planning staff in order so a community could deal with such problems. And what's that second part you were talking about?
Well, the second part to this is that I think that the elections were kind of rigged. They were really not. They're supposed to be non-biased, but I think personally that they were extremely biased. I think they were based more on popularity and predetermined image among the peers, and as a result, elections of the leaders was it was more of what you thought of the person, not what they could do to help the community. So.
Why do you think people chose to do these things?
Well, I think it was mostly personal interests because, well, here's what I got from Civic Mirror. Well, the decision-making process goes in this order from logic, greed, and then fear. Uh, in our own contract.
With Matthew Alexander.
Yes, that's correct. Um, we each bought we shipped in and bought 2 apartments, and we were each going to get a share of the benefits from it. And since you chipped in the most, I figured that, well, if you put in more money, you should get more money out of it. And he wouldn't do this because I think it'd be personal greed for that. And then it was only once he caught wind that we were actually going to sue him because of that is when he actually relented. So I think it goes like logic, greed, and then fear. Because I mean, the logical thing would be that we all get the share of the profits proportional to what we put in.
I see what you mean, but I also think we should cut him some slack, since in this game, you kind of have to do almost everything that you can to get yourself ahead. Because if you don't kind of step on other people's heads, you're not going to get ahead. But I also think, along with you, that if you're going to do that, you shouldn't, you should try to make it at least a bit more equal among people. Well, I can understand what you mean.
Not only that, I think that I really didn't like the way that Civic Mirror was being played. I think it was more individually based. like everybody was working for their own ends, and they were just basically kind of making alliance and then backstabbing because they wanted their own thing. I mean, it's kind of like an Americanized type of society. Everybody's working for their own good, and they don't really care about anybody else. Um, the way I think it should have been played is kind of like similar to the Japanese uh, social structure, in that everybody has their own place in society and everybody works with a group. That way, that it'd be really, really efficient, and basically everybody would be happy because everybody's getting what they need to have been done.
I see what you mean. So in Civic Mirror, you said that you had some troubles doing things. What were your strengths and weaknesses in the game?
Um, well, firstly, I don't. Civic Mirror kind of limited what you have to do. Um, like any simulation, you couldn't really do anything that you wanted. I think that this would kind of represent the basically unsaid laws, kind of like the morals in any government. But I think that some things that you couldn't do really, really limited what the possibilities of the simulation, such as really the lack of a job market. I mean, sure there were jobs, but there wasn't really a market because, well, a lot of the job market is kind of labor and like fixing machines and doing all this stuff. I mean, we really couldn't do that in Civic Mirror.
Well, yeah, you're right. I remember we were starting a job board, but nobody really came up with any jobs. I don't remember, and we started coming up with it too late. I mean, we decided that we needed a job to create more money, like flow in the economy, but we decided that on the very last year of our actual game, so that didn't help at
Well,
all.
yeah, I see. I think that they should kind of model some of the things off of actual video games, because if you have a job market, you're really not getting anything done. But because kind of like what I just said, you can't really do manual labor. Like it just doesn't work. So what I think they should do is have some jobs that what happens is, well, they have kind of like this game screen, and what you do is basically they're based on skill, strategy, maybe intellect or something else. So what happens then is that you have to rely on skills that you already know in order to make money. So I don't think it should be like just, oh, okay, I said I did this and then I'm gonna pay you money. But I think it should be like, okay, you have proof that you did it because, well, you completed your task or whatever.
Yeah, I remember that when we were buying a lot of the like selling a lot of the apartments, like our little apartment complex, I guess,
Living spaces.
living spaces. Yeah, I noticed that a lot of people said they would pay us back when they got back on their feet, but we were never able to get back on our feet because of not having any money for circulation, not having any job board, an actual job board, and the money was just. We all realized that it was just being sucked up by the government.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think it
they were
also.
going to come up with a stimulus package, but that wouldn't help. Everybody would just raise their prices, and then it would still be going to the government.
I think that also has to do with the individual lens because everybody said, oh yeah, I'll pay you back, but they never did because they never really considered what anybody else needed. They just were concerned with what they wanted. Um, going off of that, I think that the government should have hired some people, or at least let more private investors take over some of their enterprises, because then either that or they can hire some like a department for distributing the goods, and then just give them a paycheck, so there would be more money circulating throughout the economy.
All right, so what you mean. Thank you for coming
All
to
right,
the
thank
channel,
you.
and thank you for watching.